Okay, the first thing I need to do is to apologize. I'm afraid my Russian is not good enough to speak to you in Russian today. But your translators are very good. I've been listening to them for the last hour. I know also that I am between you and coffee, so I will try to be crisp and short. What I want to do is to talk, perhaps in a different way, about securing the Internet of Things. So, okay, we're good. So, I want to talk about why the Internet of Things is important to all of you in the room, whether you're developers, whether you're from enterprises, or you are just thinking about how this could make your business better. I want to talk about why economically this is important to you, and perhaps talk a little bit about what may be a future direction in the security of the Internet of Things. And I will try to build on the presentations that you've heard already this morning in order to do so. Okay, if we could, the technology. Right, okay. So, let's be honest. Whether you're in the public sector or the private sector, innovation is hugely important to businesses. Only 12% of the Fortune 500 companies in 1955 are still on the list today. Some really big names in 1955 no longer exist because they failed to innovate. And every organization I talk to wants to use technology to interact better with their citizens if they're a government, or their customers if they're an enterprise. They want to understand the data that is happening in their system and make better use of that data. But that changes the way you have to think about security. The concept of a security perimeter changes significantly, because your perimeter now includes, in some cases, many millions of connected devices that you allow into your network. And the existing security model that your organization may have developed, and frankly that your IT organization may be very comfortable with, needs to change too. And detection in particular becomes far more important than a straightforward perimeter detection. But interestingly, that security in your organization has to come from your organization's strategic approach to risk. And when I go around the world talking to organizations, it surprises me that very few have had that conversation about what is our approach to risk. Because if you don't know what your approach to risk is, then how do you know what your approach to security is? Because you could go to 100% security, where all of your systems would be secure, but the reality is most organizations wouldn't function. You wouldn't be able to do business with that type of business model. And of course, security has an impact on privacy too. So let's talk, and let's be honest about the Internet of Things. The baseline security for the Internet of Things is really poor. But firstly, it isn't designed into many of the devices that are out there today, whether you're talking industrial or commercial. Many of the industrial Internet of Things devices were designed with a working life of between 10 and 30 years. And the idea is that they will be put into place and never touched again until you come to replace them in 15 to 20 years. And the working assumption was often that those devices would not be connected, so there was no need to update them. But then technology moves on, and then an organization decides, actually, we can do some remote monitoring or remote controlling of these devices or the systems that they serve. And suddenly, these devices that were never designed to be connected to a network are on your network. I can give an example of an organization in the nuclear power industry that has oscilloscopes, and I apologize, translator, that are connected to their network, many hundreds of them, and they have no idea how they got connected to the network. There was an assumption they were not connected to anything, but someone at some point had connected them, and there was no security barrier. The other side of it is there is no recognized international security standard for devices or applications that actually now run on network. And worryingly, when I go and talk to people who develop applications, what I tend to see are people going to open source toolkits. They'll download whatever happens to be the best fit for what they're trying to do. And we know that many of those open source toolkits are full of, firstly, malicious software, and secondly, software that has many known vulnerabilities. So what about the economics? So in your organization, is there an economic factor here? Well, I would argue that there is. An increasing number of governments, enterprises, companies like us, and insurance companies are now saying, if you want to be part of our supply chain, you want to be part of our infrastructure, we need to see evidence of the fact that you are producing secure software and hardware. Interestingly, only 1 in 3 supply chain vendor contracts, and this was from Aon Insurance, contain any form of security provision. So remember those words you heard in the first session about trust. If you don't know your vendors, if you don't have security conversations with the people who are in your supply chain, what does that mean to the trust in your systems? And this will move to all sectors. So I would suggest to you that if you are thinking about this as part of your business, the security of the Internet of Things that is connected to your business, or that you are developing or going to roll out as a service, will be an economic discriminator. If your security is good, you will win market share. If your security is bad, your competitors will take your market share. So this is something you have to think about. So let's deconstruct how you secure the Internet of Things. And the first thing to do is to say, so what is it? Well, the first is you have connected devices and sensors with some on-device software or applications. The second part is you have network availability to connect those devices to the third part, which is usually a cloud or enterprise hosted service that connects the device to data, that connects the device to analytics, that gives the information to an organization, or that sends a control signal to the device. So let's start with the really difficult one. Connecting the devices, securing the devices and sensors is really difficult. Let me tell you why it's really difficult. 2 examples. let's say that we want to create a connected toaster, so that we're going to go to market with a new device so that people can toast their bread before they get out of bed. Well, let's say that our non-connected toaster costs $30 to produce, and the market price that we can get for that is $40. So if we're going to build connectivity into that, the hardware to do that will probably cost us $4 or $5, but the market will probably only bear $45 for the price. So being realistic, the cost of the sensor that we're going to put into the device will probably only be $1, $2 at most. So the reality is, the level of security you can get in that type of device is always going to be low. The second point is, what do we do about updating that? So let me give you an example, and it's one written on a bit of paper because I only found it on the plane yesterday. This is a smart TV. A smart TV, I won't say which manufacturer, was released in 2011. The last firmware update for that TV was produced in March 2013. That was when the TV company went on to creating a new model. In March 2015, there were 584 known vulnerabilities contained within the software and the hardware of that connected television. And there will be no more updates for that device ever. It sort of gets a bit more worrying, because a TV, you might think, well, okay, so what? You then have to think about how many third-party components you have in these devices, and what is the security model for those devices. So, for example, in a standard router, there are over 102 third-party components. In a security camera, 21. In a baby monitor, 11. And in a hospital infusion pump to infuse drugs into patient, 5. So it's really difficult if you're going to be based on securing the device. And I come back to the previous presentation. You have to start on the basis that you cannot trust all those devices. So where do you go to actually think about security? The next part is where it becomes interesting, because the devices have to talk on the network. If they're a control device, they have to receive instructions over the network. And if they're a sensor giving you information, they have to take instructions and pass information on the network. So the network becomes an interesting place to think about security here. What I want to do is, without saying that this is the only way you can do it, I want to talk about what we see as the way forward. And I also want to talk about how you can help, because I think this is really important. We see securing the network as the way forward here. We want to encourage device manufacturers to be building security in, but we have to recognize we have legacy systems, devices that have already been out there for 10 years, and many, many devices that have no security built in. So what we want to do is to use the cloud to actually capture the data and secure the data as it goes through. So through our cloud services, we're building in security to capture and orchestrate the data flow between devices and networks. And other people do this too, so this isn't a Microsoft sell, it's what we see as the way forward. The way that we design the security in is a device that we call the hub, and whatever your network is, whether this is for you, think about how you are going to do something similar on your network. What our hub does is will connect literally millions of devices to a partitioned back end in your infrastructure. and it enables secure communications. But what it will also do is it will deny access to anything, any device that you have not accredited as meeting your security. And it facilitates federated identity for literally millions of devices that you provision. Where this comes in for you, as I know many of you are working in the startup and the developer field, is we really want to encourage you to develop on our platform. So we have a program called Certified for the Internet of Things. That's the web address at the bottom, where we would encourage you as partners and developers to sign up to develop on our platform. It doesn't just have to run on Microsoft. It runs on multiple operating systems, and devices are certified, not only the fact that they work, but also that you will produce an operating manual so that people understand how it works. And what we're looking to do, and again why I want to speak here today, is we're looking for the hardware partners, people like you, to actually develop with us, and we will provide support to that. So, my conclusion, and 4 minutes for questions, is the Internet of Things isn't going to go away. There's a real appetite in business to incorporate sensors and devices into core business. Every sector I go to see this as a business opportunity. But if you want to be successful, either as using the Internet of Things or developing for it, then you need to be producing secure products that will run. We think we have a way forward, and we would really like you as the developers to join us. And anyone who wants to talk to me at the end of the presentation, we can talk more about how you do that. So with that, I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Роберт, большое спасибо за интересную презентацию. Коллеги, у нас есть возможность задать 2-3 вопроса нашему спикеру. Прошу задать. От чего совсем нельзя защититься?
The question was, what can we be not protected from at all? The answer to that is, you will be protected from what your strategy protects you against. If you want to be protected against 100% of all risks, you are probably not going to be able to do business. The reality is, this is a risk business. And so it is for you, in your organization, to say, okay, so what really matters? What would really put me out of business? What would really lose my reputation or give my competitors my market share? And those are the things that you need to have a protect, detect, and respond approach to. But there will be some things in your organization that you will say, we really can't protect against that unless we spend a lot of money, or unless we stop communicating to our customers or citizens. And actually, we will take that risk. And if we are attacked, we will have a mitigation plan for that so that the attacker will not generate returns from that attack. So the answer is, I would suspect for most businesses, you will never, ever want to prevent all attacks, because otherwise you will not do business. So if you want to protect against everything, governments have tried, and even then it's really difficult. So you're actually much better working out your key threats and risks and having a plan for those.
Коллеги, прошу еще вопрос.
Would you please comment on the state of international standardization for IoT security?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question.
Would you please comment on international standardization process for IoT security?
The question is, can I comment on international standards for IoT security? The answer is, we need them, in simple terms. I sit on some standards bodies. We have too many standards. I work all around the world. In Microsoft, we have to produce a grid for almost every country in the world, showing how our products and services meet those standards. To most people, the standards are incomprehensible. Because there are so many, people don't know which ones actually mean anything. So my personal wish would be a much smaller number of standards that would apply anywhere you go in the world, that developers can use to develop to, and businesses can look at and understand that they're buying something secure. There is a lot of work going on to try and get there, but we need to get there quicker.
Коллеги, у нас есть возможность задать последний вопрос. Прошу.
Как вы оцениваете возможность того, что риски, которые будут сопровождать новые риски развития интернета вещей, приведут к тому, что интернета вещей как явление всеобщего просто не станет? То есть вместо прогресса мы перейдем к некоторому такому здоровому регрессу.
I think sometimes you have to go through some really bad times before you get to better times. We have big problems in this space. As the previous presenter showed, many critical national infrastructure organizations are miles away from where they should be in this space. There was recently a public report looking at the cybersecurity of the UK's civil nuclear power plants, and it was awful because they are not doing the basic things to secure their networks and devices and infrastructure. So there are going to be bad times. But the commercial imperatives for this are so strong that the Internet of Things is here to stay. And actually, I think there will be both government and commercial pressures on organization to actually be secure or go out of business. And that, I think, is what will drive change. So I do think there are going to be problems, but I think there is a way forward, and I do think this is here to stay.